The virgin Nanny asked to leave early, and the widowed millionaire said, "Stay with me tonight." The autumn rain began falling over Brooklyn Heights just as Claire Bennett slipped on her coat and stepped out of the small room next to the kitchen. She had just finished putting little Emily to sleep and hoped to get home early, before the storm, forecasted to last all night, grew worse. Claire lived a simple life, one that stood in stark contrast to the world she worked in. As a live-in nanny for a wealthy family, she had mastered the art of quiet presence, always there, never fully belonging. She had grown used to tidying up after elegant dinners, changing diapers, reading bedtime stories. But tonight, something in the air made her more uneasy than usual. As she stepped into the living room, Jonathan Reid was already there, as if he'd been waiting. The soft glow from a table lamp cast golden light across his tired face and sorrowful eyes. The top button of his shirt was undone, and a glass of wine rested loosely in his hand. He looked at her, voice low and hoarse. "Claire," he said, "don't go tonight." She paused, hands still gripping the strap of her bag. "I'm sorry, but I need to leave early. My mom is—" "Just one night," Jonathan interrupted. "I don't want to be alone anymore." For the first time since she started working there, Claire felt pulled back, not by duty but by the honesty in his eyes. Slowly, she nodded. "Okay, I'll stay." Jonathan Reid's apartment sat on the top floor of a stately building in Brooklyn Heights. From the balcony, the city lights stretched like rivers of gold through the thick curtain of rain. In the stillness, only the soft rhythm of raindrops tapping against the glass filled the silence. Claire stood by the window, watching the droplets roll down like thoughts, slow, persistent, impossible to hold back. Behind her, the apartment was pristine to the point of coldness. The polished wooden floor reflected the dim lights above, and abstract paintings hung in perfect lines, like conversations never spoken. Emily, the 5-year-old with chestnut curls, was now fast asleep in her pastel-colored room filled with plush animals. Claire still remembered the sleepy little voice. "Miss Claire, water please." Tiny moments like that had bonded her to the child faster than she ever anticipated. Jonathan hadn't said another word since she agreed to stay. He sat on the leather couch by the fireplace, half a glass of wine in hand. His posture radiated exhaustion, yet everything about him remained composed, a man far too used to hiding emotion behind tailored restraint. Claire adjusted her coat collar gently, unsure what she was doing here. She thought of her mother, Lucille, struggling with heart issues back in Burlington, Vermont. The call from earlier still echoed in her mind. "Claire, I need to pick up my medicine this week, but insurance still hasn't cleared." That soft tremble in her mother's voice had made Claire tighten her grip on her bag. She worked all day and cleaned offices at night for extra cash. And yet, no matter how hard she tried, she always felt suspended between two worlds, one of care, the other of mere survival. She glanced at Jonathan. He was staring into the fire as if searching for something long lost. "Do you eat pizza?" Jonathan's voice broke the silence after several minutes. He stood near the kitchen, phone in hand, eyes still fixed on the screen. Claire took a second to reply. "I eat anything, as long as I don't have to cook it." For the first time he smiled. Not a polite smile, but a real one. Subtle, yet enough to soften the tension in this overly neat apartment. "Then margarita okay?" he asked, turning to her. "Sure, thank you." Claire removed her coat, folded it neatly, and sat down by the window, hands folded in her lap. They had a late dinner together. Two adults seated at opposite ends of the kitchen island, bathed in warm golden light. No music, no pretense, just the sound of rain outside and the soft clinking of porcelain as she reached for another slice. Jonathan spoke first. "Elena, my wife, she loved rainy nights. Said the rain sounded like the background music of memories." Claire didn't speak. She simply nodded, quietly listening. "You're the first person to stay here since Elena," he continued. "Strange, isn't it?" "Sometimes strange is exactly what we need," Claire replied gently. A pause passed between them, and then she said slowly, "My father died when I was 16. Since then, my mom can't sleep when it rains. Says it reminds her of him." Jonathan nodded, sipping his wine. "Grief is the kind of sound no one else can hear, but it echoes in your head forever." Claire looked at him longer this time and saw that the weariness in his eyes had little to do with work. "Emily looks like her mother," he whispered, "especially her eyes. Every time I look at her, I see Elena." "And that hurts," Claire guessed softly. "So I avoid it," he admitted. "I work late, leave her with others. Think if I stay busy enough, I won't have to feel anything." Claire's fingers tightened gently around her ceramic cup. "But feelings don't disappear just because we ignore them," she said. "No," Jonathan replied, looking at her. "They just go quiet until the time is right." And in that moment, between the rain, the cooling food, and two tired souls, something began to take root between them. The next morning, soft sunlight filtered through the thick curtains of the penthouse apartment. Claire woke up on the living room sofa, wrapped in a charcoal gray wool blanket. The scent of freshly brewed coffee drifted gently through the air. Emily came running, hair tousled, a wide grin on her face. "Miss Claire, Daddy made pancakes this morning." Claire sat up, still a bit dazed. "Your dad did?" "Yup, he only does it when it's a special day." Claire chuckled quietly. She had never seen Jonathan near a stove, let alone flipping batter on a hot pan. She walked into the kitchen and froze. Jonathan was wearing a plain white t-shirt, jeans, and was barefoot, standing by the stove with a pancake spatula in hand. No suit, no tie, no polished executive, just a father, trying. He turned when he saw her, calm as always, though something in his eyes had softened. "Good morning. I hope you slept well." "I did, thank you. Especially because of the blanket. You looked peaceful. I didn't want to wake you." Claire nodded, still feeling out of place. Not because of any awkwardness, but because she suddenly found herself stepping into a part of someone's life she never thought she'd belong in. As they sat down for breakfast, Emily chattered excitedly about a dream she'd had, a princess riding a dragon to rescue her father from a tower. Jonathan listened intently, smiling more than Claire had ever seen him do. The atmosphere felt different, not cold or overly polite, but warm, like a real morning in a real home. When Emily ran off to fetch her storybook, Jonathan turned to Claire. "I think I need to try harder, for her, and for myself too." Claire looked at him, and for the first time, truly believed that something inside him was beginning to change. Claire never thought a single night out could unravel everything she had tried so hard to keep balanced. Lily, her best friend since high school, had called 3 times within an hour. "You can't just work and sleep forever," Lily insisted. "You need air, Claire. Just one night." At first, Claire said no. She was tired, and truthfully, she felt guilty. For reasons she couldn't name, she felt like she was already in something, between her, Jonathan, and Emily. But it had no name, no label, and because of that, she had no right to call it anything at all. She said yes, a borrowed black dress, a little mascara, and a hesitant smile at her own reflection. The bar was in the Lower East Side, small, cozy, filled with warm jazz and people who moved like they belonged. Claire wondered when she last felt that young. Daniel came up to her at the bar. Interior designer from Brooklyn, tall and easygoing. And most importantly, he didn't feel forced. Talking to him came easier than she expected. But somewhere between polite laughs and smooth conversation, Claire realized something. Her heart didn't stir. She smiled, nodded, asked questions, but her thoughts were elsewhere. Jonathan, messy hair in the morning, white t-shirt, that soft look in his eyes when Emily smiled. Daniel asked her to dance. She agreed. It was a simple, slow dance. He kept a respectful distance, but then he said, "I didn't think I'd meet someone this lovely tonight." She smiled, and immediately guilt hit her. She got home around midnight. As she entered her room, her phone lit up. "Emily kept asking if you'd come back. I was wondering too." Jonathan. She read it again and again until she fell asleep. The next morning, Claire arrived on time. There were no pancakes, no Emily running into her arms. Jonathan stood in the kitchen pouring coffee. He looked at her, but didn't smile. "Good morning," she offered first. "Morning," he replied dryly. Claire placed her bag down, washed her hands. Silence hung heavy. Finally, he spoke. "Last night, you went out, Claire nodded. Yeah, with a friend. With who? She paused. A friend of my friend. He placed the ceramic mug on the counter, too hard. Good, he muttered. It's good that you have something else out there. Claire turned. Her tone sharpened. Is there something wrong? No, he said. Just interesting how you have time for strangers when Emily cried herself to sleep. She froze. Jonathan, I didn't know she was that upset. If you had what? He cut in. Not gone? Claire stepped back, hurt. I'm not Emily's mother. Jonathan hesitated, voice quieter now. No, you're not. But you're more to her than anyone else ever was. The room fell into stillness. Thank you for reminding me, she whispered, voice shaking. Claire! He said her name, softly, without his usual armor. She turned back, eyes filled with hurt and anger. I don't know what this is between us, Jonathan, but I've been trying, really trying. He said nothing. And I don't need you to tell me who I am in this house. I know my place all too well. Claire, don't. Last night I met a kind man who smiled at me, listened to me, but I didn't feel a thing because my mind was still here, a flicker in his eyes. But I can't keep staying in a place where I'm not allowed to exist as a person. And she walked out of the kitchen, leaving Jonathan alone, for the first time, unsure what to do with his own feelings. Claire's absence didn't make the apartment empty. It made it unnaturally quiet, as if all the sound had been drained from the air. Emily noticed first. Where's Miss Claire? She asked when no one made her morning milk. Jonathan pressed his lips together, trying to form the simplest response. She needed to take a little break. Is she sad? Emily asked again, her wide brown eyes searching his. Jonathan didn't answer. He just knelt down, tied her shoelaces, and kissed her forehead before sending her off to school with the driver. That entire day, Jonathan couldn't focus. Numbers, blueprints, meetings, they all blurred behind the image of Claire walking out that door. He remembered her voice, her eyes when she said, "We need to talk, really talk." And he, out of fear, had backed away. That night when he returned home, he didn't go into the kitchen, didn't turn on the lights, didn't pour himself wine. He just sat in the dark, phone on the table in front of him. Twice he wrote a message to Claire. Twice he deleted it. Every word felt either not enough or too late. Finally, he opened the drawer in his office, the one holding the file Vanessa had left, the investigation into Claire. He had never opened it, but tonight he needed to know. Inside were the basics. Claire Bennett, born in Burlington, Vermont. Mother with heart issues, low-income family. Left college to work full-time, clean employment history, glowing recommendations. Jonathan felt like he couldn't breathe. There was nothing in that file to accuse Claire. The only betrayal was his own doubt. Just then, a message pinged. But it wasn't from Claire. It was from Emily's teacher. Hi, Mr. Reid. Emily was sad all day. She said she misses Miss Claire. Could you help her call her? Jonathan stared at the screen. He felt hollow. Sometimes you don't realize what you've lost until a 5-year-old has to say it for you. The next morning, Jonathan called the agency that had placed Claire months earlier. He spoke plainly. I need her address. It's a family matter. The receptionist hesitated, but after heartfelt pleading, finally gave him the building where Claire now lived. An hour later, Jonathan and Emily stood in front of an old apartment building in Bushwick, Brooklyn. Narrow stairs, chipped paint on the walls, and a handwritten name tag on the 3rd floor. Apartment 3B, Claire Bennett. Jonathan knocked. A young woman, clearly a roommate, answered. Hi, is Claire home? The girl looked at him, recognizing him instantly. You're Jonathan, right? She just left. A family in Park Slope is trying her out for a nanny position today. Emily tugged his hand, teary-eyed. Daddy, can we go find Miss Claire? Jonathan nodded, only one thought in his head. If I wait, I'll lose her for good. They reached Park Slope in under 30 minutes. The new family's house stood on a tree-lined street, red brick, white fence. Jonathan rang the bell. A middle-aged woman opened the door. Sorry to bother you. I'm Jonathan Reid. I need to speak to Claire. It's important. She studied him for a moment, then nodded. "She's in the backyard. Please come in." Jonathan walked through the house, heart racing. Claire was sitting on a picnic blanket with two small twins, teaching them how to fold paper cranes. Sunlight danced in her hair. Emily spotted her first. "Miss Claire!" Claire turned, stunned. For a few seconds, time stopped. Jonathan stepped forward, standing a few feet away. "I came to apologize." "You don't need to," Claire said softly. "I understand." "No, you don't," he shook his head. "I was wrong. I let fear and doubt speak louder than trust. I let you leave when you were the one holding this family together." Claire gripped the paper crane in her hand, eyes wet. "That 5-year-old cried for you 2 nights straight," he continued. "And me? I sat in a dark apartment, staring at my phone, full of regret." Claire said nothing for a long moment. "And if I told you I still love you, and I want you back..." Jonathan stepped closer, pulling a small box from his coat pocket. Claire gasped, whispering, "You're not serious." "I am. But if you think a proposal now is too much, then think of it as the biggest apology of my life." He knelt in the backyard, hands slightly trembling as he held out the simple ring. "Claire Bennett, would you give us another chance?" Claire laughed through her tears. "You're crazy, but yes, I'll try again. For you, for Emily, for me." The wedding took place a week later. No grandeur, no spectacle, just simplicity and warmth, exactly how their love had begun. The backyard of their new Brooklyn home was adorned with white ribbons, wild daisies, and string lights hung overhead. Jonathan built the flower arch himself, and Claire, in a short-sleeved lace gown that Lily had helped alter, smiled quietly as she watched him fumble with the last bouquet. Emily wore an ivory princess dress and walked down the flower-strewn path with a basket of paper petals. She was the honorary bridesmaid. The ceremony was held at sunset, golden light falling gently on everyone's shoulders like nature's blessing. Claire's family came from Vermont. Lucille, her mother, walked with a cane and eyes filled with pride. Jonathan bowed as he met her, and Lucille simply took his hand and whispered, "Thank you for seeing my daughter with your whole heart." Vanessa came too, late and silent. But when she saw the glow on Emily's face, she said nothing. Perhaps for the first time, she saw something undeniable, something right. When it came time for vows, Jonathan said, "I won't promise to always be right, but I promise I'll always choose you, no matter what the world says." Claire smiled through her tears. "I won't promise to be a perfect wife, but I promise to be a home, for you and for Emily, every day." And when they kissed, no one cheered loudly. They simply smiled and touched their hearts, because it wasn't a performance. It was the affirmation of something long known. Later, Emily hugged Claire tightly and whispered, "I knew you'd be my mom." Claire held her close, her cheek resting on Emily's curls. And for the first time, deep in her chest, she believed she truly belonged here. After the wedding, life didn't turn into a fairy tale, but it began to slow down, just enough for them to hear each other. Claire learned to adjust to a new rhythm. No more subway crowds each morning, no more scrubbing office floors at night. Instead, there were mornings baking with Emily, afternoons biking through the park with Jonathan, and evenings reading together under the warm glow of the lamp. Jonathan was still Jonathan, meticulous, a bit stubborn, and always overthinking. But now he let those habits soften, sitting on the floor building puzzles with Emily, or wrapping Claire's birthday gift with old newspaper just because he liked the colors. Emily grew a little more each day. She started calling Claire Mom naturally, without hesitation. Every time Claire flinched just a little, then smiled. One evening over spaghetti on the balcony, Emily looked up and asked, "Daddy, can you tell me about Mommy Elena?" Jonathan glanced at Claire, waiting for her silent permission. She smiled and nodded. He began to tell stories about violin music in a small Paris flat and early mornings when Elena walked through the rain to teach music. Claire listened, not jealous, not sad, just quietly receiving those memories as something sacred, part of their shared family. Later, after Emily had fallen asleep, Jonathan turned to Claire and said, "Thank you for not trying to replace Elena. You simply became yourself." Claire rested her head on his shoulder and whispered, "I never wanted to replace anyone. I just wanted to be loved, for who I really am. That night, with the wind whispering and city lights blinking beyond the window, they understood. They didn't need grand promises or perfect roles. Just three people, brave enough to open their hearts and kind enough to stay. Vanessa arrived on a Monday afternoon. No warning, no smile, no flowers. Jonathan had just picked Emily up from school when he saw his former sister-in-law standing at the front door, handbag in hand, posture rigid as always. Claire was prepping dinner, and Emily, midway through taking off her shoes, froze when she saw Aunt Vanessa's stern face. "Do you have a minute?" Vanessa asked, her eyes fixed on Claire. Jonathan nodded, gesturing for Claire to take Emily to her room. They sat across from each other in the living room. No words at first. Then Vanessa spoke. Not cold, but not gentle either. "You really married her?" "I did. Did you even think about Elena?" Jonathan lifted his gaze, calm and steady. "I think about her every day, but I don't live there anymore." Vanessa was quiet for a moment. "I've seen Claire's file. I know everything." Jonathan nodded. "So have I, and I don't need anything else to trust her." Vanessa exhaled. "I used to think I was protecting the family, protecting Emily, but seeing that child today, I've never seen her so happy." Jonathan smiled faintly. "Claire isn't replacing Elena, but she loves Emily in a way no one else ever could." Vanessa stood, her handbag still tucked under her arm. "If this is wrong, I hope it's the kind of wrong that turns out right." Before leaving, she bent to kiss Emily's forehead, then turned to Claire. Not with judgment, just a quiet nod. For the first time, Claire saw in those eyes, not full acceptance, but release. On a late June night, the air was gentle, as if summer was pausing for breath before arriving in full. Jonathan spread a large blanket on the rooftop, carrying up a basket of cookies, 2 mugs of cocoa, and a picture book for Emily. Claire leaned back against him, her arm wrapped over his shoulder, while Emily lay across her belly, head resting on her folded arms, eyes fixed on the sky. "There's a star," Emily whispered, "just like Mommy Elena used to tell me about." Jonathan looked at her, then glanced toward Claire. Their eyes met in a silence that needed no words. "Claire," he said softly, "do you ever think, what if you hadn't stayed that night?" She smiled. "I've thought about it, and I know I would have regretted it forever." "Me too." A breeze danced through their hair. Inside Claire, the ache of displacement was gone. She had traveled so far, looking for a place to belong, only to find it in the very place she almost left behind. Emily sat up, pointing toward the sky. "Look, the brightest one. I think Mommy Elena is watching us." Claire pulled her closer. "If she is, then she's definitely smiling." Jonathan nodded. "Because she knows we're still a family. Not perfect, not typical, but real." "I like that," Emily said earnestly. "Our family is one of a kind." The three of them lay side by side, hands entwined, eyes fixed on distant sparks above. No grand speeches, no vows, just this moment, peaceful, soft, real. Claire closed her eyes, listening to the steady rhythm of Jonathan's heart beneath her cheek. In a world where so much could fall apart, some things could still be held together if we're brave enough to stay. Claire found out she was pregnant on a misty October morning. The air was crisp, the kitchen smelled of cinnamon waffles, and Emily was coloring at the table while Jonathan sliced fruit. Claire walked out of the bathroom, a pregnancy test in her trembling hand, her face a mixture of shock and overwhelming emotion. She began, voice barely audible. Jonathan stepped forward, glanced down at the test, then looked up at her. "Is it real?" She nodded, tears spilling over. He didn't speak. He just pulled her into his arms and held her tight. Behind them, Emily peeked up, curious. "What's happening?" Claire knelt down, face soft, and touched the tip of Emily's nose. "You're going to be a big sister." Emily's eyes widened, then lit up. She squealed and hugged both adults with all her tiny strength, arms barely able to reach around them. The months that followed were filled with quiet tenderness and patient care. Jonathan read every book on pregnancy, attended every checkup, and even learned how to massage Claire's swollen feet. Emily, devoted to her role, drew a picture each morning for the baby inside, and declared herself the greatest big sister in the universe. Claire, despite the waves of fatigue and sudden tears, felt more whole than ever. Every night, the three of them sat together, hands resting gently on her belly, waiting for a little kick. One night, when Claire winced in her sleep, Jonathan jolted awake. He turned on the lamp, knelt by her side, and whispered, "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Claire laughed through her pain. "As long as you're here, I'm not afraid of anything." Then one spring morning, when cherry blossoms had just begun to bloom in Brooklyn, the time came. The hospital was calm, the corridors quiet. Time slowed as Jonathan held Claire's hand, eyes locked with hers. He had never seen her so strong. Sweat on her brow, teeth clenched, but her eyes glowing with something sacred. When the baby's first cry broke the silence, Jonathan collapsed onto the nearby chair, overwhelmed. Tears poured down his face, not of fear, but of joy too powerful to stand through. "It's a girl," the nurse said with a soft smile. Claire held the newborn to her chest, her face glowing with tears and warmth. "She looks like you," she whispered, glancing at Jonathan, "and like Emily, too." Jonathan kissed her forehead, then gently touched the baby's tiny curls. "Welcome home, little one." The week that followed was a blur of sleepless nights and endless wonder. Emily, taking her role seriously, read bedtime stories even when the baby couldn't understand, sang lullabies she made up herself, and often placed her hand on Claire's belly and asked, "Is there another one in there yet?" Claire recovered slowly, and when she was too tired to move, Jonathan would bring her warm ginger tea, wrap a blanket over her shoulders, and whisper, "I've got you." One golden afternoon, they sat on the balcony like old times. Emily lay between them, the baby sleeping soundly in Claire's arms, curled up like a tiny angel. "We've been through so much," Claire whispered. Jonathan nodded. "And we're still here, together." She smiled. "I think this is the final place." "No," he said, pulling her closer. "This is the beginning." Behind them, the sky turned soft amber. Sunlight filtered through their hair, casting a quiet glow over the small family. Not perfect, not polished, but whole. Not grand, but everything. And for the first time since the day they met, none of them imagined leaving. There was only one thing left to do: stay, always.